Pivot tables in Excel have a dreadful reputation. I think there's a couple of explanations for this. One is they are misunderstood. People often are not sure what a pivot table is actually useful for. The second is that Microsoft's pivot tables have too many options, and oftentimes people just kind of use them scattershot and throw all the parameters in and end up with just a big mess. This fits in with my main rule for using Excel, and that rule is know what you're looking for before you start messing with it. If you don't know what you're trying to get out of your data, you are definitely not going to have a successful experience with Excel. So, having said that, let's look at pivot tables by comparing it to a tool most of us are familiar with in Excel, which is filtering. So I've got this data set here from this fictitious bakery with some various useful and potentially less useful data in it. I'm going to select my entire data set by clicking in the first column header, holding down my Shift key, and clicking on the last column header, going to my data ribbon, and selecting filter. Now I get these little disclosure triangles in each column header, and I can begin filtering. So I can just look at new customers who like scones. Alright, that's potentially useful information, but that's going to be tedious for me to come up with any actionable data for an entire business plan. So, when do I know it's time to make the leap to a pivot table? Well, I shouldn't call or reach for a pivot table until such time as I'm looking for either transactional or financial information, something quantifiable. If I've got numbers involved and those numbers can be summed in any way, shape, or form, then a pivot table is my friend. So, while I've got a cell selected in this table, I'm going to go to my Insert ribbon and choose to insert a pivot table. Excel automatically selects my entire data range for me. I like to work in a new worksheet with the pivot table. It gives me more elbow room, so I'll leave these defaults as they are. Click OK. Now, here's where people usually start to go wrong. Again, we want to know what it is we're trying to find out. If we just select all of these fields, we are going to have a big mess that is not going to tell us anything. That being said, we don't have to know exactly where each of these things needs to go. We can actually let Microsoft decide some of those things for us. For example, if I just simply select amount, Excel is smart enough to recognize that amount contains numbers, and that numbers should go under values. So already I can see that cookies are a big part of my sales. So let's find out something about cookies. Let's see the status of my customers. Wow. So new customers seem to really, really like cookies. Old customers, not so much. So I wonder if there's any other interesting piece of information I could glean. Let's look at favorite color. Alright. Now, as I said, as you start to add data fields, the information starts to get a little distracting. So it would be a good idea now to focus a little bit. So I'm going to remove status for the time being so that I'm simply looking at favorite color versus product. So here are cookies, and interestingly enough, people whose favorite color is red seem to really like to buy cookies. This for instance, might be a useful piece of data if I wanted to do a targeted ad campaign that used a lot of red in it for new customers. Now, one other thing I'd like to cover with Excel is let's go back and add status, and let's put it up here in the report filter area. So you'll notice that moves this up to the top. So I can quickly look at continuing customers and their totals of favorite color by product that they order, or my new customers, or I can remove the filter by putting them all back in. I can also, I don't have to use columns and rows if I want. If I want to look at product by favorite color, I can drag product underneath favorite color in the rows, and then I'll break down favorite colors and the products each favorite color likes to buy. I could also go up here and bring country down, and I could see what favorite colors were in each country. Or I could look at product by country. And I could remove favorite color, in fact, entirely. Alright, so instantly we began to see how pivot tables can be more useful. Now, one last thing that would not be achievable with filters. Let's look at this interesting correlation we found. And by the way, correlation does not equal causality. So just because something correlates doesn't mean that just because you like the color red, you automatically like cookies. It just seems to have been the case with this particular data set. Alright, so I'm going to put favorite color back up here in the column. So here's that figure, $1,190 worth of cookie sales. But there's one piece of information I need before I can be certain that cookies are such a big hit. How do I know that cookies aren't simply a more expensive product? And that could explain the additional sales. So down here in values, if I click on the little triangle, I can go to value field settings, and rather than summing that value, I can choose to count. This will tell me how many transactions for each product. And so as you can see, the dollar amount has nothing to do with the price of the product. The cookies are ordered 6-to-1 versus most of the other products. So again, something that could not be done with filters. So I hope that explains a little bit about pivot tables, and maybe they won't be quite so scary. Again, the secret is work with only a few things at a time and know what it is you're trying to find before you reach for a pivot table.